The story of an actor on a hit TV show, a member of the Church of Scientology.
Life, maybe all of it, devoted to a religion that demanded much of your time, your money, and your mind.
Ah yes, everyone's favorite cult, Scientology, or as some like to call it, Scientology. They seem to randomly appear in the news for some controversy just every couple months, then disappear into obscurity. It has even become infamous for all the celebrities such as Tom Cruise, John Travolta, and well, just everyone on this list, for flocking to this cult and being open about their involvement. We all heard the rumors around the playground as kids that if you went into a Scientology center, you would be forever stalked and eventually kidnapped by this mysterious organization. But are they that bad in reality? Well, yes, but for many more reasons. Besides all the lawsuits, stalking, and rocket-powered interstellar DC-9s carrying aliens, what does Scientology actually believe, and are they really as predatory as people say? Well, the short answer is yes, but the best place to start to understand why is a quick lesson in what happens when you walk into a Scientology center. Like any good cult, an easy barrier to entry is always a key step, and Scientology definitely has that. The church claims to have over 11,000 churches, missions, or groups in over 184 countries. Now, the reason that church part is in quotes is because Scientology is not a fully standalone religion, but more of a psychology, according to its leaders. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's imagine you get a major concussion and somehow lose all cognitive function and are now a prospective member to Scientology. When you walk into that center downtown, what happens? Well, in many cases, they start you off by simply showing you a movie of the founder, glorious L. Ron Hubbard, who's going to come up a lot later. The video also apparently contains lots of Tom Cruise, for some reason. Now, if your concussion has worn off by now, you will try and wiggle your way out of there before they stalk you forever. But if you stay, you will be given a complimentary book on Dianetics, the name of the psychology they teach, and a free auditing. The auditing is a simple test using a special Scientologist tool called an e-meter, which in my opinion looks like the things they use to scramble your brain, but I digress. But how it works is you hold the two brain-scrambling things in your hands while the auditor asks you questions about your past that bring out emotions. Using the e-meter, the auditors are able to determine where your depression and all of the problems of your life come from. But before they tell you that, you have to pay. And by pay, I mean it would be quicker to give up all your money you've ever made on the spot. Scientology gets that nickname for a reason. The only way to gain more knowledge about Scientology is to pay, and pay even more. When you pay, you also begin to climb the ranks of Scientology, as many of the higher level beliefs are only available to certain ranked members. This ranking system in Scientology is called the OT system, or the operating thetan level, and the only way to increase this and your knowledge about Scientology is to take courses and buy books. These courses can start off reasonable, like $15 for over 16 hours of material, but that's a one-time deal. There are stories online of people paying $1,200 for a 50-hour course that was able to be finished in roughly 20 minutes. That means if you took that course, you would be paying over $1 per second of time you spent learning. God, I really need to get around to starting that cult soon. But if you want to join a cult that's actually cool, consider subscribing. I promise it doesn't cost $1 per second to watch my videos. Well, yet anyways. Anyway, situations like the $1 per second are the norm in Scientology. Many strive to become clear or free themselves from the thetans, but to achieve this, you have to pay almost $5,000 of courses and books that are required to get to that level. Honestly, the more research I did, this seems more like a pyramid scheme than a religion. But what does this religion actually believe? Okay, this is where it gets really confusing. So I said before that Scientology is a pseudo-religion, but they do have religious beliefs. So we start with someone called Xenu, who thought his planet was overpopulated, so he took all of the aliens on the planet and froze them. Once he had the frozen aliens, he placed them all on interstellar DC-8, or maybe a DC-9, or was it a 737? This heavily depends on what source you look at, to be honest. Now, this modern-looking aircraft that could fly through space because it had rockets attached to them so they could fly the aliens across the galaxy to Earth. Once on Earth, the frozen aliens were dumped into volcanoes on Hawaii. Then the souls of the aliens became the thetan that floated around the Earth until they came across mankind. Then, the Thetans possessed the human race and became responsible for all depression and anxiety. However, the reason Scientology is not a standalone religion is because they don't believe that Zeno is a god, but more of a historical figure. In many cases, the church actually describes itself as being a Christian-based faith. Now, there is a high chance some of that may be wrong, as there are many conflicting stories of the beliefs, and I also think I had a stroke midway through writing that. But that is a rough amalgamation of different theories to what they believe, and also just a summary of the South Park episode Trapped in the Closet, which apparently is pretty accurate. Now that we know what the Thetans are, we can go back to talking about the e-meter thingy and the auditing process. So when you walk into that Scientology center that we mentioned before, and they give you that free auditing, they're using the e-meter to measure your thetan levels and reduce them so you feel happier, according to Scientology at least. However, in my personal opinion, if there was some soul causing me to be depressed and a lobotomy machine could fix that, I would be skeptical since it would obviously be put there by Keanu Reeves, not the Xenu guy. Speaking of Keanu Reeves, he's in a lot of sci-fi movies, right? Well, my favorite belief of Scientology is that all science fiction movies are representations of things from the past creeping into our thoughts. This means Star Wars, The Matrix, and Star Trek are all real. Gonna have to make an AP Star Wars class to keep up with the times now, I guess. Okay, now we are done with all the mental gymnastics that Scientology feeds its members, we can move on to... Quick disclaimer time, everything in this section is alleged rumors because Scientology has an alleged history of suing people that speak out against it. And, well, I'm broke. So, we all know Scientology has done some real shady stuff in the past. Things like selling a rebranded Walkman to its members for over $500 barely even breaks the surface. However, one part of Scientology that rarely comes up in the media is something called Sea Org. Now, Sea Org began in the 1960s as L. Ron Hubbard's personal navy. This is not a joke. Sea Org contains all the things that a cult military needs, including military uniforms, internal rank, and a totalitarian government. Additionally, joining Sea Org is a whole additional process to joining Scientology, as is where all of the most indoctrinated and committed members usually end up. You start by signing a whopping billion-a-year contract to work for the organization, and in return, you receive the whopping salary of $50 per week, room and board, and even food. Oh, and to earn that $50 a week, you have to work for over 16 to 18 hours a day, and consistently. With no weekends, as many members claim they work for over 100 hours per week. Officially, even all the higher rank Sea Org members make the same amount as everyone else. But all high-ranking officials in Scientology are officially part of Sea Org. Now, I'm not claiming that these high-ranking Sea Org members do not make the $50 a week that everyone else does. But let's say if another business, hypothetically, was able to bring in, $200 million a year, I think the executives would be being pretty well compensated. Who knows, maybe these Scientology leaders have a side business of laundromats. Just seems like a good investment to me. But now that many of the original members of Sea Org are starting to age out of their workable years and being left with no retirement or savings, the horror stories are starting to pop up, and God are they bad. One harrowing story comes from Rosemary Chawick, who wrote a personal letter to Tom Cruise and David Miscavige, detailing the abuse she faced in the church. In the letter, she details how she devoted over 35 years to the church, and what did she get in return? Well, when she was the victim of abuse from other Sea Org members, she was interrogated for several days, as Scientology members used an e-meter to determine what she had done wrong to deserve the abuse she had received. After this interrogation, the punishment didn't even end. She writes about how she was forced to live in a trailer with no running water or heat. Also, being forced to do manual labor at the same time. And this is just one of her many stories about the church. The full letter itself is linked in the description if you want to read the entire thing. The worst part is Miss Chawick is not the only one with these kind of stories. Another famous case that documents the straight-up crimes Scientology is committing is that of Paulette Cooper. Mrs. Cooper had written a book in 1971 called The Scandal of Scientology, exposing all the crimes Scientology was committing. Our best friend, L. Ron Hubbard, did not like this very much. And there are theories that L. Ronnie Boy had direct involvement in a Scientologist plot that broke into Mrs. Cooper's office and stole blank stationery they knew had her fingerprints on. Then, they used that stationery to write bomb threats, mailed the bomb threats to themselves, and claimed they came from Mrs. Cooper. Miss Cooper faced over 10 years in jail until an FBI operation found the paper trail exposing what Scientologists had done. Multiple high-ranking members were sentenced to jail time, including L. Ron Hubbard's wife, who allegedly took the fall for Hubbard. Funnily enough, after her release, Hubbard tried to erase all trace of her being in the church. I wonder why. These are just some of the stories too. There are countless more that can send you down a rabbit hole for hours just learning more and more about all the weird shit they've done to people. I actually want to rescind a previous statement of this video in that only people with severe brain damage join Scientology, because in many cases, members are just ordinary people. Like most cults, Scientology preys on people at their lowest, people that have had severe loss, divorce, or just heavy bouts of depression, and they're often looking for something meaningful to life, and Scientology offers them that. In many cases, that is why it can be so hard to get people to realize just how awful their situation is. To me, preying on the most vulnerable and then siphoning all of their money and livelihoods is one of the most disgusting things someone can do. Okay, that's enough mental gymnastics for me for one video. Before researching this video, I just expected space DC-9s, but holy f*** was it worse. So much worse. Scientology has ruined so many people's lives by squeezing every last penny they have to the point that when many members leave, their first stop is bankruptcy court. So if you can take one thing away from this video, just don't go into that Scientology office as a joke or just to see. These people really are crazy. Anyway, thank you if you got this far into the video. I'm starting to like these kinds of research videos more, and if you want to see more, be sure to like this video. It lets me know you want this more kind of content too. Also, leave any interesting Scientology stories you've read about online in the comments below, so I can waste even more time going down this endless rabbit hole.